So you found the skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Matt with Maddie, number 28. I am, of course, here with the eponymous Maddie, and the eponymous Matt is, he's not appearing visibly because it's just an audio recording. Because this is a nutrition podcast that we're listening to, and there has been
This is a nutrition podcast.
So far, there has been zero nutritional advice, but we have
None.
had Raw Matt most recently confuse Orthodox Judaism with the Eastern Orthodox Church, which
Now,
isn't a Jewish
do we think he, confused or conflated?
Honestly, I don't know. It's hard to tell with Raw Matt, right? It is
hard to tell.
He is so dumb that it's usually almost impossible to figure out what is actually happening in that brain. Like, what does he think he's saying? It's usually impossible to tell.
I have broken my brain on this show trying to figure that out. And listen, team, I'm here to do it again. I've got my whiskey and soda, whiskey and cola.
And I've got myself a summer shandy, which is a lemonade and Vice beer.
Nice.
So, speaking of which, that brings up the whole idea of the drinking rules. Because, in case anyone...
drinking rules!
Yes.
It's a Tuesday night stream!
Yes, we drink for Tuesday night streams, in case anyone is wondering. So, yes, now, before we actually get into the drinking rules proper, I want to say that there is no obligation that anyone, including my guests, our co-hosts, drink. Maddie spent a good 9 months or so not drinking any alcohol on this show.
I sure did.
Yep. Which is why, long before the announcement, I was like, something's up.
And I was going, don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
In that case, you should have just lied and about what you were drinking.
I should have. It's just straight vodka on ice.
Yep.
That's what I'm drinking.
Vodka on ice.
Yeah.
Look, I was good. I didn't tell anyone about my suspicions.
Yeah, you were so good.
Yeah, I know better.
It was great. And now I got a Hannah, who's hopefully sleeping right now.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
So, if you do want to play along, but you don't want to play along with anything that is intoxicating in any way, that is absolutely fine. If you want to play along with juice, water, soda, coffee, tea, a vape pen, chips. You can eat a chip every time we take a drink. I don't care. Do whatever you want. Eat an M&M every time. Whatever. Just have fun. This is here for fun. This is not some kind of an obligation that you have to do the drinking. No. But if you do choose to play along and you choose to use some kind of inebriating or intoxicating substance, please be responsible. This is not time to take a shot. We usually get into like the 30s or 40s at least on this. You take a shot, you will die. Take sips of whatever it is. Like, you can take a swig of beer or something like that, right? And please be responsible. Don't, after you've been playing with alcohol or some other intoxicating substance, go and drive a car, operate heavy machinery, fly a plane, steer a luxury...
Befriend a raccoon in the wild.
Don't do that. Don't text your ex.
Don't do that.
Don't start being the pilot for a large, luxury cruise liner in the Arctic Ocean. Don't do any of those things. Be safe. Stay home. Take a nap, maybe.
Here. Yeah, I'll do my toddler voice. Make a good choice.
Yeah, there you go. So, now that that's out of the way, we will take a drink anytime Raw Matt says something that's just so stupid, it kind of melts our brain a little bit. We'll also take a drink anytime he actually gets something factually correct. Now, it can't just be him reading something off of some source. It actually has to be, in his brain, and then he says it, and it's right. We'll also take a drink if Raw Matt tells a joke that doesn't land, or tells a story that didn't happen, there you go. Or if he mentions that political party from, the 1930s and 40s in Germany. He's prone to that. We will also take a drink anytime either Maddie or I can successfully guess what Raw Matt is going to be saying next. There has to be some kind of ambiguity. We'll also take a drink anytime that Raw Matt cites a source, and if we check the source, it turns out to not just fail to support him, but it actively contradicts him. That we call
This
Trojan
one's called
source.
Trojan source,
Yes.
and it's my favorite one.
Yes. We also have ad hominid, which is any time that Ramat confuses what we can know about any larger taxon to which the species Lucy of Australopithecus afarensis belongs, based solely on that one specimen. So, for instance, if he says, well, we don't know what Lucy's feet would have been like because she doesn't have feet, well, that's an ad hominid, because guess what? We have feet from other Australopithecines. Now, we can only get one of those per stream, because once it happens once, it usually just happens in rapid-fire succession over and over and over and over again. We also will take a drink anytime anyone super chats anything to the effect that AIG are a bunch of dicks. Now, you do have to be careful if you just type that in right there. Sorry, it's usually bag of dicks, my apologies. If you just type that in, YouTube will censor it, so you do have to be a little clever about that. We'll also take a drink for every single gifted membership. So if you look down at the support with a little dollar icon, you will see that gifting memberships is an option. If you go ahead and click that and then put in a number, we will take 1 drink per. Now, if we get to the point where it's like we need to drink like 30 times, rather than spend that time counting out 30 drinks, I'm going to finish my drink, grab another one, and add 30 to the drink counter, which I am now realizing
on that one,
I don't have up.
On that one, we reserve the right to use judgment and not die.
Yeah, but I'm also realizing I don't actually have the drink counter up, which is in fact, that is a Dapper's a Professional.
That's a number 10, Dapper's a Professional. Guys,
take a
we're
drink for
also
that.
going to drink anytime Dapper makes a mistake, such as not putting the drink counter up, forgetting to unmute something. Now, if a system just crashes, that does not count. That's
Correct.
because of gremlins, not Dapper being a professional.
Right. So there is that distinction.
So,
not everything
Yeah,
that
there
goes
is that
wrong.
distinction.
Not everything that could go wrong is my fault. For instance, if the internet cuts out, that's not me. I didn't choose to have the internet cut out. But if I make a mistake, then it's Dapper's a Professional. Also, if anyone super chats or milestone chats, anything with the various kaiju emojis that we have just for channel members, I will take a drink for that. Also, if Godzilla or Mothra come by audibly, we will take a drink for that. And with that, I think that I have covered all of them.
Yeah, that's 12 drinking rolls. That's about right.
Yeah. So,
Amazing.
while I am setting up the drink counters... Oh, we have a couple things to read. DM Original In Situ Academic Excavation Wing for $5 says, God is the best nutrition, maybe. Should we ask a Catholic Godzilla? We will take a drink for the Godzilla.
Ooh. I like that one.
All right.
I
Let's
don't-
get it.
Sorry, I just pulled up the stream to get the view, right? And it was very loud in my ear.
Yes, that can happen.
Yeah, and
okay.
I want to have chat up so I can read it. Just keep an eye on chat, see what y'all are up to, having fun over there, making jokes.
All right.
Yeah.
Dutch Tunicate Official for $2 says, drink rule demonstration with a Godzilla, so we'll take a drink for that.
Cheers.
Thank you very much. And then Off Journey, who's been a member for 6 months and is at the Amnio level, says, Team Journey and Associates Viral Marketing for the win with 3 likes, 5 shares, and a pineapple cider. Very nice.
Nice.
All right, now that we have gone through the pending super chats and milestone chat, and we have gone through the drinking rules, I think it is time to go ahead and hit play and see what Raw Matt has for us.
Let's do it. We got to get into it so we can hit drink triggers so we can get through this.
Yes.
Just non-denominational myself, because I think you can kind of get lost into denominations. But supposedly it's like the oldest form of Christianity, Orthodoxy.
Yeah, so this is Matt the host, not Raw Matt the guest. And he seems to be at least vaguely aware that the Eastern Orthodox Church is not a group of Jewish people doing Judaism stuff. And that it is, in fact, the second largest Christian body in existence.
Yeah.
Pastor Anderson, Stephen Anderson, actually has a really funny hour sermon on Orthodoxy.
Oh, is it funny? Press X to doubt.
I really doubt it's funny. However, I'm morbidly curious to see just how badly wrong that idiot can get another Christian group.
Yeah, it's an out. Jeez, if you think like I would do that stream with you, Dapper, like on a Saturday or something. But like I could only do it once. You know what I mean?
No, because putting Steven Anderson on your YouTube channel is a surefire way to get a community guideline strike.
That's true. That's true.
That's never going to happen. I might
That's
watch
never
it
gonna
for my
happen.
own edification to see just how bad Steven Anderson can be. But yeah, that's not going to appear on this channel because Steven Anderson has had like 4 or 5 different channels shut down for community guideline strikes because, as it turns out, Steven Anderson is basically every kind of bigot you can find. You pick a kind of bigotry,
and like actively calls for violence. Yeah. He's awful. So, by the way, the fact that host Matt is like, he had this really funny hour-long sermon. I'm like, was it though? Was it funny?
Well,
I'm concerned.
The host Matt
that was host Matt.
Was, yeah.
Right. I didn't have opinions about host Matt. I didn't have opinions about host Matt, but now I'm worried. Right now.
Oh, this might be
now I'm prepared to not like host Matt.
You know what? I think you might be right, Fear. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm not sure why that would be. So I am going to speed this up a bit, and we'll see if we get through pre-Yiddish.
And he says it's ridiculous, and I don't know. I just think it's kind of a distraction from worshiping Christ. But
well, here's the thing. It's both good and bad, and I'll tell you why. Orthodoxy goes back to, like you said, the oldest writings. What are the old with the new? Or else you're only reading half the story. You see, you can definitely do it, and it's not bad or it's not crazy to do. It's just...
Yeah, this is where Raw Matt thinks that for some reason the Eastern Orthodox Church doesn't read the New Testament, which is weird.
Which is why we think he thinks it's Orthodox Judaism.
Yeah. So I might have covered it last month, but like, there's 2 readings in a normal Sunday service in an Orthodox church. One of them is from an epistle, and the other one is from one of the Gospels. So, like, it's... Yeah.
It's just you have to combine everything. Yeah. You're supposed to study everything. I'm not against it. You definitely should study it. But you have to make sure that when you're studying it, you don't get lost in it. Like you said, you don't just go, oh, the oldest writing is the absolutely hard. And something I like to do. I like linguistics. So don't get lost in it. Just study everything.
Yeah, I remember I'm really fascinated with the Greek versus Hebrew thing because I know there's the Hebrew Roots movement. There's a great documentary kind of exposing that. And Pastor Anderson said that the King James Version, which is the only version I read, had the most translators working on it. I think it was like...
The King James Version did not have the most translators. In fact, technically it didn't have any translators. It had revisers.
Yeah.
But, okay, we already talked about that.
54 translators.
They
knew multiple different...
Rosina Cold Bones Keller for $1.99 says AIG is a minaudiere of mini monkey toys. I'll take a drink for that.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Types of Greek. So it's interesting because you look at these newer versions of the Bible, and they definitely do take out key verses, right? I've looked it up. It's like
it's something you lose the meaning oftentimes. So that's what happens with a lot of modern day newer translations. They don't understand it. They just remove it. It doesn't fit there anymore. It doesn't.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, they say brethren so much. I thought it said breathen at first.
And how that drives species mutation and new species emergence.
New topic.
It's like that.
Okay,
I mean, if you guys are walking up and saying, "Hail, how art thou today?" People would just look at you like, "That dude's crazy." I mean, what is it? Like, was he at a Renaissance festival?
Amish.
Well, so basically, this is Raw Matt just being surprised that linguistic change is a thing, which it sure is.
Well, and also making the assumption that any any English Bible that comes after the King James version is like going to the King James and then rewriting that, as opposed to, right? Because he's complaining that newer versions are different from the King James in certain places, right? Which is like, no. But he's coming from that, like, the King James version is the one true thing. And so any deviation from that must be bad. But like, no. They went back to like original sources, or as old of sources they could get, and did a new translation, because turns out the King James version is real bad.
Yeah. I mean, as far as for its time, it's fine.
It's fine, yeah.
But we've learned a lot.
Yeah, like, listen, Archimedes thought that density was related to the shape of an object, right? Not like atoms, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He thought that whether or not an object would float, right? So he thought buoyancy was related to shape, right? And we still got the Archimedes principle out of him. That doesn't mean we shouldn't, like, update it, you know?
Roasting a Cold Bones Keller says, he just mentioned Hebrew roots. Other Matt Powell used to be into that, too. Yeah, Hebrew roots is one of those weird, like, it combines a lot of like fundamentalist Christian stuff, along with a bunch of like weird conspiracy theory stuff, in which like the quote unquote lost tribes of Israel scattered into like various places, and now like most Europeans are actually descendants. It's just sort of like the white supremacist version of Black Hebrew Israelites, which are just sort of the black supremacist version of Christianity. Everyone,
Yeah.
if you want to be a racial supremacist and a Christian, it's really easy to do if you just say that you're the real Jew. Oh, okay.
Right.
Cool.
Cool.
First of all, like, what's going on here? It just wouldn't even make sense. Yes, exactly.
You have to play World of Warcraft to hear that. Someone ask him about epigenetics and how that drives species mutation and new species emergence.
Did we do that too?
We did that too, yeah, because I had to clarify what epigenetics is. What's happening?
I thought it was interesting, like the connection between like Satan taking the form of a snake to deceive Eve and get her to question God's authority and to think for herself, which is kind of like the common theme today in these motivational speakers. But, you know...
Okay, don't think for yourself, because that's what the snake said to Eve to do.
That's what the snake said to do. And also definitely don't worry that a snake was talking. It's fine.
Yeah. This doesn't at all sound like a cultish thought-stopping idea. It's like, oh, hold on, I'm thinking for myself. That's what the snake told Eve to do.
That's what the snake told Eve to do. So women should definitely not think for themselves.
Don't do that. No.
Don't do that.
That is dumb enough. I'm going to take a drink for that.
Yeah. Creation Myth asks, how did they get to epigenetics? That was an audience member question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to fault them for not having a segue, given that they're just doing like a Q&A thing. My unfinished journey for $2 says, dumb, what other traits does raw max share with rocks? Lack of nutritional value. Let's see, mass. They both have mass.
They both have mass. Yeah, they're both made of like atoms that are on planet Earth. Right?
Yep.
That specifically exist in our crust. Right?
Yeah, that's true. Although I don't know
That's
that there are
real.
any atoms in the mantle or the core that aren't also in the crust. Like kinds of atoms. Like
Well,
elements.
that's true. Yeah, that's true. I mean, the distribution is different.
Yeah, that's true. He doesn't have a whole lot of iron and nickel. A little bit of iron.
Yeah.
I don't think there's
A
any
little
nickel.
iron.
I don't think nickel comes up in biochemistry at all, does it?
I don't know. I'm not a biochemist.
Hey,
But I feel like there shouldn't be
biochemists.
much nickel in me.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned anything from Full Metal Alchemist, listen, he didn't mention nickel in the composition of a human.
Okay. Well, as we all know, Full Metal Alchemist is in fact an authoritative source on like biochemistry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Snake, dinosaurs, reptiles. We always hear of reptilians. Have you ever looked into that connection?
Apparently there's a dinosaur steak connection? Okay.
Okay, so the snake was lying to Eve and dinosaurs are lies? Is that the...
I don't know. I mean, snakes certainly aren't dinosaurs.
They are... Did you say they are not dinosaurs?
Correct, they are not dinosaurs. I might have used the contraction.
Yeah, no, that's good. I was like, wait a minute. No, I know they're not. But sometimes I second guess myself on dinosaur stuff when I'm on your channel.
Roasting a cold bone keller for $4.99 says, is it just me or is everything going really fast? I just woke up and I can't tell. No, it's not just you. We'll turn it back to regular speed.
Yeah, because we're definitely at it. We skipped over something, but we're at a point we haven't gotten to yet, and I doubt it's worth it to go back. You know?
There's absolutely no way I'm moving backwards on this video. Come on.
I've heard about the connection a lot. The one that did it the most was probably David Icke. It comes to mind.
Oh, no!
Okay, I don't know who David Icke is, so I'm concerned. Do you want to give me a little lesson?
David Icke, at one point, he was most famous for his sports ballmanship.
Oh, okay.
But then he became famous for buying into, like, Velikovskian cosmology, where Earth actually used to be like a moon of Jupiter, which used to be the actual sun, and then another stray planet flew through the solar system, causing a whole bunch of cataclysms, and Earth got flung into its current orbit, and then that extra planet Nibiru is now somewhere out in the depths of space, but it's going to swing back around and cause another whole big thing. He also became famous at one point for wearing nothing but teal, because he said that it was the color that would raise his vibrational frequency to a higher consciousness level, because those are words that make sense in that order. He also claimed to be the returned Christ and God, And he also had ideas that many famous individuals, including the entirety of the British royal family, he himself was British, were in fact reptilian aliens who could shape change and had infiltrated the, upper class of most countries.
Wait. Okay, so there were lizard people, except it doesn't matter that they're lizard people because they can change shape to be anything that they want.
But occasionally, low-res, shitty digital cameras will actually catch their shape changing, shifting a little bit, and it's definitely not just an error between. Well, it's definitely not like digital compression or problems with unintentional data moshing. None of that. No, it's actually the shape change field glitching out a little bit. Oddly enough, just as soon as those high definition cameras started coming around, they must have got much better shape change technology because it doesn't seem to happen much anymore. Just sort of like how Bigfoot just got way more elusive once basically everyone had a camera in their pocket. Just one of those things,
He was probably the one that studied the reptilian. He believed that the people that are in the most power have a reptilian connection.
Okay, hold on. Does Raw Matt actually believe in the reptilian conspiracy?
Oh, I hope so. Let's find out.
This would be news. Okay, everyone, go share this with your friends because we need to find out. We need everyone to know. This is breaking news if Raw Matt.
Breaking news here on Dapper Dinosaur tonight.
Lieutenant Professor Savage Cobra for $5 says, Raw Matt reaffirms his membership to the Dumber Than a Rock Club. Seriously.
And he said that a lot of people definitely have a reptilian attitude. They use the reptilian part of the brain.
Okay, there is no actual reptilian part of your brain. I'm just going to toss that out there. It's not a real thing.
They're different functional. They don't have the care, and since dinosaurs are reptiles and they didn't care, that they take on those personality traits even more.
So far, it doesn't sound like he actually believes that there are literal reptilians running the world. It sounds more like he's just using reptilian as like a shorthand for like being uncaring or something, I guess. Which, I mean, if you wanted to tell me that the political elite acted in a way that was commensurate with the negative stereotypes of reptiles in many cases, I'm not going to disagree with you, right?
Right. And when we say lizard brain, we mean like acting on impulse, right? The most like primitive, if you will, instincts that humans can have, right? It's a colloquial term.
I've definitely heard of it. Of course, I study everything. You know what I mean? I'm...
Is it everything or is it nothing, Matt? I'm going to take a drink. That was a joke.
I think he knows. He's not somebody who knows a little bit about everything. He knows something. He knows something wrong about everything. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. He has a ridiculously stupid opinion on literally everything.
To the knowledge, but as far as it. Again, I wish I could screen share. I got another picture I really want to show you right now where they said if dinosaurs had evolved into human beings, this is what we would look like.
Oh, it's the reptilian, the little evolved troodontid. So, there's this thing from
there's a whole episode of Star Trek Voyager about this.
Well, yeah, there is. Distant Origin with the Voth.
Yeah.
Rosina Cold Bones Keller for $4.99 says if Raw Matt says dinosaurs are reptiles, then humans are reptiles. No, I would disagree. So Reptilia more or less is identical with Sauropsida, which would include dinosaurs, and it would include lizards, and it would include crocodilians, and it would include a bunch of other things most people probably haven't heard of, sauropterygians, things like that. But it wouldn't include mammals. So yeah, you can validly say that dinosaurs are reptiles without also including mammals. So. Yeah.
And it shows like a reptilian-looking human being.
Yeah, okay, so that's what we're talking about. So back in, I think, the 80s, right? There was this guy who was like, well, what if dinosaurs hadn't gone extinct? And the smartest dinosaur I know of had become, like a technological sapient civilization. Which, what if? But he commissioned...
Fun sci-fi story.
Yeah. And he commissioned this statue of a hypothetical humanoid that had evolved from a troodontid. The thing is, it looked like one of the background saurians from a Star Trek original series movie, right? Because they pop up every once in a while. And it's just like, dude, no. There's no reason to think that dinosaurs would lose their tails, stand upright, get hyper-flexible ape joints in their shoulders, get, like, weird ape pectoral muscles, turn their jaws into mammal-looking jaws. Like, it just looked like a Star Trek character. Yeah. And it was just like, no, man, there's very little reason to think that this is how this would work. Roberta says...
Don't have to stand up to have big brain.
Yep. Roberta says, so in a way, dinos still exist today. I mean, they exist in a very serious way. Every bird that you've ever seen has been a dinosaur. Birds are dinosaurs. Lizards are not dinosaurs. Turtles are not dinosaurs. Crocodilians are not dinosaurs. But birds are dinosaurs. Birds are no less a dinosaur than a T-Rex or Triceratops or a Stegosaurus.
And that is a really popular thought going around right now, too, because of how selfish people are and how greedy. It's a very reptilian thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Humans need to copy reptiles in order to be greedy. That's just not an inherent character flaw that just kind of happens when you exist in a world where not everyone can have everything they want as soon as they want it.
Yeah.
They lay eggs and they walk away. They don't tend for them or care for them or nurture them.
Wait, that's not always true, right?
So not only is it not always true, for instance, crocodilians and birds tend to be pretty good parents, but also it seems like he's trying to imply that's what humans do. And
right.
I've never seen a human lay an egg, but then again, I haven't asked for all that many of them.
There was in front of my daughter's daycare, in one of they have a little like bush, right? And they've all grown up and flown away, but there was a little robin's nest with like 4 baby robins in it. And my baby and I would check on the baby birds every morning when I drop her off. Last time I checked, they were all gone. They'd all flown away and gotten so big. But that was really fun for like a few weeks there. We got to check on the baby birds.
It also reminds me of the time that I described what squab was as a dish in the D&D game, and you were a little bit horrified, Maddie.
I was a little bit horrified. Yeah.
Roasting a Cold Bones Keller for $1.99 says Homo Reptilia from Doctor Who, which was...
Yeah.
The odd thing there is that you shouldn't be keeping the genus name. That's silly. You should go with like some new genus name and then go with Sapiens. But you know what? I'm not on the Doctor Who writing staff. If I were, I would point out that maybe the plan to burn the spiders in the matter of a few milliseconds is the more humane version of the plan than letting them slowly starve over the course of days or weeks. And that having the Doctor be the one proposing the much worse plan on the grounds that it's not directly killing the spiders doesn't actually work. Sorry, that was just a really dumb episode, and I really, really hated it.
They'll eat their own young if they get hungry, right? It's a reptilian process, and that's how our world is.
Mammals do that.
Yeah, mammals do that too. Find a
gerbils, especially from personal experience.
Gerbils will do it. Gerbils will do it with seemingly no reason, but even many animals will eat their own young if they're particularly young and they're stressed enough and they need to like move, right? It's like if you have like a gopher den, right? And the gophers realize, we have to move, but they have young children, they'll eat them. Because you know what? That's a quick way to get some energy so you can move and you can have another litter.
Yeah.
If you don't eat them, they're just going to stay behind and die, which doesn't help. So you might as well eat them. Dr. Dino for $2 says, no way birds are dinosaurs. No way how. You, sir, are incorrect. And I know that you know that.
You know, it's the rat race. It's man eat man. It's an aggressive world where we
you think Raw Matt knows that a rat race doesn't involve reptiles? In fact, it involves mammals?
I don't know.
Compete with one another, and we're destroying everything, even our own environment.
Wow. You know what? Surprisingly,
he said something true.
Yeah, good job, Raw Matt.
I'm taking a drink because Raw Matt said something that's true.
Not just true, but also, like, not aligned with his typical political opinions, right?
Right, yeah.
So, hey, you know what? I don't often say good things about Raw Matt, but credit where it's due. That's a decent take. I appreciate that, Raw Matt.
I appreciate that.
Keep more of that. More of that, please.
And so it gives off that vibe of reptilian. So I know what you mean, but
Roasting a Cold Bones Keller for $4.99 says, the Doctor always proposes the slow death so they can use the TARDIS to save them later. That is one of the things about Doctor Who is like, if you actually had a time machine and you could use the time machine whenever you wanted, it would actually deflate a lot of the tension that happens in episodes. And so that's one of the reasons why most of the time it's only the vehicle to get to the scenario and to leave after the scenario has concluded. There's very rarely mid-episode TARDIS time travel. But also, I wish that the times they went back into the past, they had a little bit more variety. Because holy crap, am I a little bit tired of going into the past, specifically of England. Not even often Scotland, right? It's like England specifically. Like, there's other places...
we rarely leave London.
Right. It's like, how many times can we go back to 19th century London? A lot more than you think, apparently. Go someplace else, right? Like this... Back in, like, you know, the first Doctor's time, they went to, like, pre-contact Mesoamerica. Do that again. See what's up with the Doctor's fiancé and the abandoned in Mesoamerica.
Yeah. There you go.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, it's a good point. Someone's asking to chat a little bit about globe versus flat Earth theory.
Oh, good.
Oh, goody.
Because the great thing about this is Matt is going to have to go back on his general hermeneutical principle in order to defend the globe Earth, right? Because the only reason that he is a young Earth creationist, right, is that he takes certain parts of Genesis overly literally, much more literally than he probably should if he wants to maintain a worldview that is in any way coherent. But the thing is that flat Earthers are just being more consistent with that literalist hermeneutic than Matt is. They're like, no, yeah, we know we take those parts literally too. We're just going to also take the rest of Genesis literally. Yeah, even the parts about the firmament and the foundations of the earth and the waters above the firmament. Yep.
Side note, that would make a super cool, like, sci-fi world, right? Yeah.
Or like a fantasy setting or something.
Yeah, like a fantasy setting where those things were real, right? Like, that would be cool, right? You gotta go get some rain, you know?
Tina Pack Bay says, hilarious, their chat is definitely trolling. I don't think so. Rawman is the kind of person who gets unironic young earthers who like what he says about a lot of stuff and wish he would just get the whole flat earth thing right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's the level of intellectual prowess that we're dealing with here.
And unfortunately, I looked into that for a year or so, and people will look at script.
Oh, no surprise. I'm going to take a drink. That's dumb.
Yeah.
It should not take you a year to figure out that flat earth is dumb. You can figure it out in like a day.
I want a flat earther, legitimately, I want them to explain to me, because their explanation for why things fall is because of, like, buoyancy, right? And density gradients. But, like, make the math work. How does that work sans gravity, right? Like, I want to see their equation for buoyancy that doesn't include gravity.
One of the problems is that flat earthers, by and large, cannot do math. Because...
That's upsetting.
One of the things is... You ultimately can't be a flat earther unless you are, in fact, a particularly stupid person.
Yes.
And part of that is, like, a fundamental inability to understand how math works at a very basic level. Like, we're talking, like, you have trouble with, like, middle school math. Like, 8th grade math is something that baffles you. Like, fractions, triangles... That's getting past your level. Like, you can probably add single-digit numbers, and that's about it. Multiplication, probably not your thing.
Scripture and try to prove, flat Earth. But I think it's personally a distraction. I mean, I think there are other more important things to focus on.
A lot of Christians say the same thing about young Earth, but okay.
It's just, I would say that it's... how would you prove it if you're not able to get high enough to see the globe, right?
Matt, evidence has never been your big thing that you fall back on, right? You've always been primarily concerned with your particular reading of Genesis. And if the question is, on that basis, how would you defend yourself against flat Earth? pointing to evidence is completely besides the point. It's fundamentally...
Yeah, also...
sorry, go ahead.
Like, a hot air balloon is not difficult technology.
No.
Right? And you could go high enough in a hot air balloon to see the curvature of the Earth.
Or to see the flatness of the Earth.
Right. What do you mean we can't? Even if you don't think we've been to space, right? Like, which we have, I just don't necessarily want to, like, fight that battle, right? Like, that's besides the point. You could just go to the hot air balloon, your local hot air balloon festival, find out when the nearest one is, and do that.
Roast in a Cold Bones Keller says, triangles are the flat Earth's worst enemy. You know, it's surprisingly true. There's a reason that that one of the questions to see whether or not someone's a flat earther for real, and if they get it right, they're probably not a flat earther, they're probably just a Poe, is what are the internal angles of a triangle with sides length 1, 1, and 1? Right? And the thing is, even if you don't know off the top of your head that it's 60 degrees, you should probably know that the internal angles of a triangle sum to 180 degrees, and that there's 3 angles, and therefore you can divide 180 into 3, which should get you 60, and then you can just go with it, right? But no.
Yeah, and you should know that if it's an equilateral triangle, like that, you can only do that one way.
But no, they don't get it. They routinely fail that check. One of the other ones is 10 to the negative 17th a negative or a positive number. They also routinely fail that.
Ooh, that's fun.
Yep, because they don't realize that the negative exponent just means that, you know, you're adding zeros to the front of the number instead of the back of the number. They don't get that. And then what's the other one? I don't remember what the third question is. If anyone else remembers, please tag me.
So if you believe that NASA's completely lying, it's up to us to falsify NASA. But how are you going to do that individually?
I mean, it's pretty easy. There are predictions that you can make from any flat Earth model that you can then go test, right? Like, we didn't need NASA to tell us that the Earth was a globe in the first place. That's why it was discovered by, like, the ancient Greeks.
It was discovered. The thing is, it was like discovered and forgotten a ton of times, right? Like, the fact that the Earth is round is not. There are a few things that only happened independently, like once or twice, right? The development of the zero, and then the development of writing, right? Those things are rare for cultures to develop,
very much so.
Figure out that the Earth is round, super common. Lots of folks did it, right, in different ways. The people did it before they had a concept of zero, right? Like you don't need to have the concept of zero to know that the Earth is round.
Man Cyborg, who's been a member for 39 months, my goodness, and is at the amniote level, says, get high enough to see the Earth, he says. I think drugs, not altitude, with a Godzilla, and we'll take a drink for that Godzilla. Yeah, there's a potential that you're right.
Listen, porque no los dos.
Okay, also true.
You're not going to, right? So you're stuck experimenting with flying, you know what I mean? Trying to...
No, there's no need to fly.
No!
Matt,
you can do it with a flagpole at 2 different locations!
Yep. You can just test shadow angles at known dates in different and known locations. You can look at ships going over the horizon, and the first thing that disappears is the hull, and then the sails disappear later. You can do things like note that there's differences in time zones, and that the sun sets, which are things that can't both be true if the Earth is not round. You can note that the things like the angles to the celestial poles change by 1 degree every particular set amount of distance, something that would not happen if the Earth were flat with a dome of stars or a flat disk of stars above it.
Oh, also, hurricanes wouldn't exist.
Yeah. Hurricanes
on a flat Earth
can't be explained without the Coriolis effect, right? The counter-rotation of storms in the northern and southern hemispheres doesn't make any sense without a globe that spins, right? Like, there's
trade winds, right?
There's so many things.
The Sahara Desert,
if the moon,
the Sahara Desert is a consequence of the Earth's rotation. Jeez.
If the moon is small and local, you should see different faces of it depending on where you are, right? Rather than always seeing the same face. That the only way that can work is if the moon is large and distant, not close and local and small. Like, none of this requires you to take a step into an airplane or a hot air balloon or an airship or a helicopter or a rocket. None of it.
Yeah. almost all of this you could do with a trig textbook, right? And a pencil and some friends.
Well, that might be the hard part.
You could even
for
do
raw
it by
map.
yourself if you were willing to take some time, you know?
Yeah. Roasting a Cold Bones Cutter for $4.99 says, so Raw Matt is making it sound like he's a flurper, but realized his chosen community would reject him and is trying to avoid saying it. You know, that might actually be what's happening. Is Raw Matt be like, yeah, I would be a flurper, but they wouldn't have me, which, like, when the Flat Earth is the group that would reject you, you know you done messed up.
I don't know, because Flat Earth as a group is like, there's a lot of infighting. It's weird, right? Like
also so often such
like manosphere, the Venn diagram of like manosphere and flat earthers, it feels real close.
Yeah,
you know?
There's a lot of overlap. It's not complete though. There are some flat earthers
No,
that
it's not,
don't
but I
have
mean, like,
any manosphere talking point.
Right.
Lunar Regolith Phantasmal Terrain says, what about an ornithopter? I'm not aware of any like functional, practical ornithopters, but yeah, if there were one, that would be another thing that you wouldn't have to use in order to prove the Earth is round, but that you could use to get into the air.
Yeah.
Coordinate to see if it's actually rounded. You're trying to go against to talk about the equator. Like, does an equator exist? Is there an opposite side? Because if there's
it would exist whether or not flat Earth is true, because it's just the midway point between as south as you can get and as north as you can get. It's right
also,
there.
Also, fun fact, I've stood on the equator in Ecuador, right?
Nice.
And the location of the equator as identified by like the native population like hundreds of years before European contact was more precise than the equator as determined by like French mathematicians and in like the 1800s.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Equator, that probably means it's round. Is there a Terminator? Is there like not the robot Terminator? Is there an actual Terminator where the sunlight terminates along the Earth, because that would mean that it's round? Right?
That's actually a good point. I'm going to take a drink for that. Raw Matt is getting that one 100% right, and we'll talk about it real quick. Ben Telling in 1998 says, who remembers Dapper Flat Earth map with the South Pole at the center? Oh, I do. I remember that. That was what I did.
Farm remembers.
That was what I did to annoy Flat Earth Aussie Jesus. Because I had a South Pole centered Flat Earth map, and he called it ridiculous, and was like, yeah, this is a joke. And I was like, what is it? Is it ridiculous and a joke? Why is that? Why is my Flat Earth map so ridiculous? Because, literally nothing that he can say about why my map is ridiculous wouldn't just apply to his North Pole centered map. And I specifically chose it because he's from Australia, and that map more closely matches what he actually sees in the sky than his own north-centered Flat Earth map does.
Oh, man.
I know. Okay, so why is there a problem with the Terminator? So most Flat Earthers... Well, first, I want to go back to, like, the Flat Earth that you find believed in by, like, Bronze and Iron Age civilizations, right? They believe the sun actually went up over the disk of the Flat Earth and then went down below it. And the reason for this is, unless you have really good clocks or can travel very, very fast, neither of which they were able to do, it's hard to notice time zones, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, okay, you take an overland journey to, like, you're starting out in, like, I don't know, Jerusalem, right? You're going to take an overland journey to, like, Ctesiphon over in, like, Central Asia. Okay, cool, that's going to take you forever. And every day, the time zone is going to shift by only a few minutes, right? And sure, by the time you get there, you're in a significantly different time zone, but how are you going to notice that? Nothing other than the sunset and sunrise is actually keeping track of the day for you. You don't have an objective way to measure time that isn't based on your perception. And as we all know, your subjective perception of time varies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to understand that there are time zones, which means it's easy to think that it's day for everyone at the same time, and it's night for everyone at the same time. But because Flat Earthers can't make that claim, right? Because everyone has had the experience of calling someone far away and noting that it's a different time there. Like, you call your parents and you're like, oh, hey, is the sun down there? And you're like, yep, it just set. And for you, it's high up in the sky, or vice versa, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So Flat Earthers can't make that claim. So instead, what they say is the sun is circling above the Flat Earth, and that when it's not close to you, that's when it's nighttime. But the problem is that we see the sun move below the horizon. And if you do the math on a flat Earth, where the sun is above the Earth and circling over it, there is no distance at which it should cross the horizon. Now, if you live in a place where like there's a lot of mountains or whatever, and you're like Lowland Valley, then sure, okay, fine. It should go behind those mountains. Great.
Not where I live.
Right.
It's flat. You can see Kansas.
Look, I've seen many a middle of the Pacific Ocean sunrise or sunset where there is not a single mountain that exists. Additionally, the size of the sun should change considerably if angularly, if the sun is doing that, but it doesn't. If you put on a solar filter on your camera, the sun stays the same about half a degree the entire time throughout the day. The same is true for the moon, right? The moon should also have these problems. And so, yeah, I mean, Raw Matt is correct that if the sun actually circled above a flat Earth disk, it would never technically be night. That doesn't mean it wouldn't get lighter and darker. It would, right? Because this, the inverse square law is a thing. As the sun moves away from you, it would get dimmer, but it would never be nighttime. The sun would always be visible.
Right, because that's where the sun terminates and becomes dark, kind of like the moon. There's
the sunlight terminates, but I'm going to let him have that one.
A terminator that runs across it. There's just lots of things that would have to be falsified, and I like genetics and biology a lot more than I would geology, right?
Okay, but Matt, you're right about the Earth and the flatness and how there's so many
very
things.
Wrong about biology.
Right. So that's my point, right? Is like in order to believe the things that you believe about biology, you would have to falsify a similarly colossal number of things that we observationally know to be true. And you've never done that. So basically what I'm saying is your double standards are showing, Matt.
Yeah. I'd also like everyone to know that I'm currently fidgeting with these tiny raccoon toys and I'm making them fight.
Nice.
Like I am 6. Yeah.
Or like your Darth Helmet playing with his action figure.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
So it's not my field. I never investigated.
Technically true.
It's funny, I just bought a drone.
Technically true, you're right.
Just
nothing is his field.
I'm in a beautiful area, and on the box it says, "Don't fly in the North or the South Pole." And I was thinking, oh no, this is probably going to fuel the flat earthers. They're like, they don't want people sending drones to see the ice wall.
So I think the actual reason for that is that most drones have a GPS-enabled tracking system that helps them do things like position lock. And my guess is that
there's a hole. Yeah,
there's a hole in the GPS coverage right around the poles, which would mean that the position lock system would fail, which could potentially just crash your drone if you tried to use the GPS-based position lock on that. Now, I don't. Yeah. This guy is not arguing that the Earth is flat because you can't fly your drone to the North South Pole. I'm just pointing out.
He was specifically arguing that that's something that flat earthers would grab onto to be a problem.
He's probably right about that.
Yeah.
I don't know that.
But yeah, I am very familiar with the pole hole in all satellite data because sea ice. Turns out it covers the North Pole.
One of the things about the North and South Pole is to get a satellite over it, you have to have a 90-degree orbit.
Yeah.
That has to be your orbital inclination, otherwise you will not go over the poles. And there's very few reasons to put a satellite into a 90-degree orbit unless it's to see the poles. And even then, when you do that, you don't actually spend much time looking at either poles because most of your time you're over the temperate and tropical latitudes. So, yeah.
It's much more valuable to have it like oscillate and get real close to the pole, but not actually go by it. We get much more data that way.
Rosina Cold Bones Keller for $4.99 says, "You think flat earthers have neutral density filters they put on their Nikon P1000?" No, I don't. They're actually famously bad at using any camera, including Nikon P1000s. For instance, they seem to think that autofocus is just magic. They don't realize that there are situations where autofocus just isn't going to work. So they'll do things like try to film stars or planets through their Nikon P1000. I'm like, but it's got as much, magnification as this telescope has. Like, yeah, but you're not focusing it.
Yeah.
And while it might have that much zoom, it doesn't have that much light collection power, so it's going to be dim anyway. And you don't know how to adjust your exposure. So, like, you are filming underexposed, out of focus celestial objects. And then you're like, it doesn't look like the NASA picture, so NASA must be fake. No, that just means you don't know how to use a camera.
Yeah.
Like, at a very basic level, you don't know what manual focus and, like, exposure settings are for.
Right, that's not even, like, don't know how telescopes work. This is just don't know how to use a camera.
Just regular old camera. That's beyond you.
Yeah.
Look, it's true. People aren't stupid because they're flat earthers. You can only become a flat earther if you start out as stupid.
Right.
Because there's so much about the world that if you understood at even the most basic level of competency, it would just completely shoot the flat earth out of the world. Out of the sky, whatever. Chris McDaniel, who's been a member for 17 months and is at the annual level, says, maybe these flat earthers need to move to Discworld with a Godzilla. Yeah, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Godzilla, drink. Gosh, I didn't catch it.
Lieutenant Professor Savage Cobra says, I like biology. Local man who thinks metabolism is optional. Yeah, he was a breatharian. Yeah, that's
For a little bit.
That's a thing that's true. Meldeborn, who's been a member for 20 months and is at the Sauropsid level, says, according to those wise in the ways of science, the Earth is banana-shaped. Yes.
Absolutely.
It is, in fact, specifically Dr. Peel-shaped, and Dr. Peel is the inflatable banana that Matt Powell keeps in his yard.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, right.
Oh, yeah, something more to do with
I forgot about the ice wall. Yeah.
Okay, they're making fun of the ice wall. Okay. But that was a joke that didn't land, so we'll take a drink.
Someone asked, I don't know if you covered this.
Remember, in Canada is the highest amount of magnetism that there is.
What?
Right? So,
what?
Is he talking about the strength of the Earth's magnetic poles?
That's the only thing I can think of, unless he just means that there's like a whole bunch of magnetite in Canada.
No, that's got to do with it because the magnetic South Pole, right, would be somewhere. I think it's in the Canadian archipelago.
Okay.
That's not an impossible thing to think.
That's a weird way to put that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how it's related, right? Like,
yeah,
like oh, I'm going to Google it really fast. Where is the magnetic South Pole? Because I know it's like. Yeah, it's in the northern hemisphere. I just don't know if it's not at the North Pole, the geographic North Pole.
I'll hit play while you're working on it.
They're not worried about gravity. They're worried about magnetism.
In Canada, you said?
Oh, go ahead. We're delayed, so over talking. My bad. Go ahead.
AI is wrong, Dapper. AI is wrong.
Shocking.
That was the first.
Sorry, because it's all saying that it's in Antarctica, and that's specifically not true.
No, the South Pole is in the north, and the North Pole is in the south when it comes to magnetism.
Yeah.
Not too bad. Someone asked, what's the logic behind carbon dating?
Ooh, interesting.
Carbon being in the atmosphere is coming back down into Earth, and you can find the carbon.
What? Carbon in the atmosphere is coming back down to Earth? I mean...
Well, because he's talking about carbon 12 being excited to carbon 14. That is a process that happens in the atmosphere,
that's
which
what
is
you
then...
think he's talking about. He hasn't said anything about carbon 14 or nitrogen 14. He just said carbon, which is in the atmosphere, is coming back down to Earth. I am not willing to give him the benefit.
Because it's nitrogen 14 that turns into carbon 14, not carbon 12. Anyway, it's fine. Continue.
And the half-life of carbon being 5,000...
Carbon doesn't have
carbon
a half-life.
14.
Carbon 14 has a half-life. You can't just say the half-life of carbon. That doesn't mean anything.
Most carbon 12.
Right.
The point is the ratio of carbon 14 to carbon 12, my man.
Most isotopes of carbon don't have a half-life because they're stable.
It's true. I'm taking my anger out on these raccoons.
Doesn't last very long. So you can find carbon in something recent and test it for a lot of accuracy. As where most things like radiometric dating doesn't work on anything very young. So it's easy to look up, find something carbon-based and test it to how much carbon there was in the atmosphere and what its half-life is.
No, he doesn't understand the difference between carbon 12 and carbon 14. He just thinks
14,
it's how
and he's
much
also
carbon there is.
And he thinks we're trying to measure its half-life, that this process involves measuring its half-life, not that we know the half-life. Like we did measure the half-life, but now we know it, right?
Take a drink for how dumb this is. Yeah. Perry Bronson for $5 says, remember, the firmament that lets them claim there's a clear throat ostentatiously container in clear start. That's supposed to be what I'm supposed to do. Never mind. Let me start over. Remember, the firmament that lets them claim there's a container is the one that holds the floodgates of heaven. Yes, true. Sorry, I messed that up the first time. Okay, so let's talk about how carbon dating is actually working, right? So, carbon gets into organisms from carbon in the atmosphere, primarily from plants who take in carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, break it down, and then that's the carbon they use to build their various biomolecules, right?
And then we eat it, or we eat the things that eat it.
Right. So then animals eat either plants or other animals, humans included, and that whole trophic web, right, where you go from primary producers all the way to like super predators or whatever, that only takes a few years at most, maybe a few decades, which is not terribly significant on the terms of the half-life of carbon-14. So you can just think about it as essentially instantaneous. Most of the carbon in the atmosphere and in organisms is carbon-12, which is a stable isotope. However, cosmic rays can hit nitrogen-14, converting it into carbon-14, which is radioactive. Which means that during the life of an organism, its carbon-14 to carbon-12 ratio is going to be about the same as what the atmospheric ratio is. But when it dies and it stops taking in new carbon, the carbon that already exists, that's carbon-14, is going to start decaying. And so you can measure the difference in the ratios of carbon, 14 to 12, in a sample to tell how long ago it stopped bringing in new carbon, which is to say how long ago it died.
Right. And, right, so the half-life of carbon-14 is about 6,000 years, right? And so we can, let's see, you could use it a couple hundred years, right? Like that would order of magnitude.
After about 100 to 200 years, you can usually get some kind of meaningful data out of it.
Right. So we've talked about radiocarbon dating or radio dating, radiometric dating all the time, right? The half-life matters because it matters that the half-life tells you like how long ago you can possibly measure. So you can't use carbon dating you can't use something past 10 half-lives, right? That's the rule of thumb. So you can't use carbon dating to date anything that is older than about 60,000 years old.
That would be the ideal scenario. It actually ends up being closer to 50,000 because the rate of carbon-14 production hasn't been steady, which means you have to use calibration curves, which is going to lower the usable range of carbon-14 dating.
Right. And then it also sets like how long ago you can start, right? So carbon is actually, that's a pretty fast dating system. So yeah, a couple hundred years, you'll get measurements that aren't effectively zero, right? Unlike, say, uranium-lead dating. Uranium-lead, uranium 238, 238, found it. 230. I was thinking odd numbers. My goodness, uranium 238 to lead 207, because it's 235 to lead 20. Whatever, it's fine. It's fine to lead. One of the lead isotopes. All lead isotopes are stable. Not all lead, just it's fine. Okay, so uranium to lead. Uranium 238 has a half-life to lead of 4.5 billion years.
Yeah.
Right? So we're not going to run against that 10 half-life rule anytime soon, right? That's great. But you need, like,
few million years?
Maybe 10 plus million years to have gone by before you can use it. So we can't use uranium-lead dating, for any human civilization, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so these clocks do matter.
Roasting a cold bones counter for $1.99 says Kent Hovind thinks carbon-12 turns into carbon-13 and carbon-14. And that is horrible and dumb, and it makes me want to take a quick break. So that's what we're going to do. That's amazing. So, hey, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to do the right after the break little bit, and we're going to get right back into this. In the meantime, please enjoy the musical stylings of one Bent Hovind. Feel free to take this as an opportunity to refresh your drink, get a new stack, whatever you want. But we'll be back in just a few minutes.
Excellent. Okay, I will be back in a jiffy. Yes! Wait, nah! Okay, yes, now I'm unmuted. There we go. I just got ice.
Hello,
Oh
everyone.
my gosh, that's so much more refreshing now that I have ice.
Yes, and yeah, I did have Maddie's mic on hot, so that's a Dapper's a professional right there. I'll take a drink there. Also, right as we left, Sanguine Sonder said for $10, the magnetic North Pole is called Magnetic North and Variations for Clarity and Navigation, even though it's technically the South Magnetic Pole, which is almost as annoying as a bag of AI cheese. Which means...
I'm drinking for that one, because I was immediately very annoyed.
And also, that means that I am out of that drink. So, now that we're back real quick, you guys, if you're new, you might not know this, but pretty much everyone else knows, this channel is almost entirely supported through the generosity of my viewers. Without my viewers, with their actual direct support, this channel largely wouldn't exist. It might exist in some fashion, but certainly not in a fashion where you guys are getting, like, 3 shows a day, usually... Oh, sorry, not 3 shows a day, goodness, 3 shows a week.
That would be insane.
Yeah.
3 shows a week.
Often with, 5+ hours of content every week, and spend that way with 1 week of exception for 3 or 4 years now. So,
yeah.
It's a big deal that you guys are supporting me. And if you're currently someone who is not supporting, but you're interested in, there's a number of great ways that you can do that. First of all, there's a Patreon linked down in the description. That's where I get to keep the most of what you give me. Starts at $1 a month. You can go all the way up to $100 a month if you want to. There's a 15% discount if you decide to do an annual pledge instead of a monthly pledge. Either way, you get access to this special Discord server that's just for supporters. You can also get early access to dozens of videos. There should be a new video going up either later tonight or tomorrow morning. I plan to hit...
Do you know what happens, everyone, when you support Dapper and you get early access? You can listen to hours upon hours of Dapper content.
There's so much extra
by
Dapper
yourself,
content.
Alone in your office while you're writing your dissertation, and it's like having a friend in your ear. And by golly, people like me.
If I didn't like you, I wouldn't invite you to my RPGs.
It's true. Before you finish your spiel, you should do the gifted memberships so they don't go away in chat.
All right. Well, they can't because I can keep track of them.
Oh, because
so
you are, in fact, a professional.
Yes, I'm actually going to finish the spiel real quick. It won't take much longer. Okay. All right, so there's also the channel memberships. There's a join button right below this video. Starts at $1.99. You can go all the way up to $20 if you want to. You can still get access to the same Discord server. You get access to the same early access videos. You also get your name in green, the cool little symbol. Like, you see people in chat who have, little green tetrapods or little top hats, whether black or gold, or some of them have a Ceratosaurus skull, some of them have my face, all sorts of cool stuff. There's also a few members-only videos. They're mostly behind-the-scenes stuff that I've put up there. Actually, one of those might be coming out tomorrow as well. And if a monthly or an annual thing isn't your deal, but you still want to help out, we still have options for that. There's an Amazon wishlist linked in the description. It just has fun stuff for me. I still have my facehugger plush that I got from that wishlist on my desk next to me. I'm touching it right now. There you go. So there's that. There's also super chats and all that, super stickers. All that's always great. There's also a merch store. If you look right below this video, there's a shelf with a bunch of merch. If you don't like the merch that's on there, try clicking through anyway. It'll bring you to the whole store, on which there are many more products that I couldn't feature on the merch shelf. But that being said, I do want to say thank you because Lieutenant Professor Savage Cobra just gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. They went to Autumn Meep, Sir Equinox, Jerry Lotus, Borg Emporia, and Plum666, which means I will take 5 drinks. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right, here we go.
So you can test and go, oh, it's just a few hundred years old based on the amount of carbon half-life. Because remember, the shorter the half-life, the easier it is to test something. And
so is he accepting, we already talked about the whole thing that carbon per se doesn't have a half-life. But is he accepting the validity of carbon dating?
He also just said you can test the half-life.
Yeah, no, that's dumb. We'll take a drink for that.
Yeah.
Does he accept the validity of carbon dating then?
No. Well, I don't know. But then he said, the shorter the half-life, the easier it is to test something?
Yeah.
Which is also really dumb, and I take you to drink for that one. I don't care if it's on the counter.
Fair, I'll put it on the counter. Not the only one who can declare drinks.
That was nonsense in a way that I feel personally attacked by. So let's see if he accepts. He probably accepts carbon dating for dates that are less than 6,000 years old.
Okay.
Carbon's half-life is very small, so it's easier to test.
No, that's not how that works.
Interesting.
No, that's really dumb.
Someone asked,
It's not interesting, dude. You're just gonna let him get away with that? How is this host even dumber than Raw Matt?
Yeah. Well, I will say this, right? Like, Dapper, you and I have probably more than the average bear understanding of like half-lives and nuclear decay, right? That's not taught in like high school, right? And this guy is claiming to be on a nutrition podcast, and so he's not claiming to be a subject matter expert in this. So I will let him get away with ignorance, right?
Fair enough. Fair enough. You make a compelling argument.
how do scientists rationalize the complexity of our metabolism?
What? They don't, because there's no reason why that would be a problem for scientists.
Yeah, we don't rationalize the complexity. We like scientists just describe how it works.
Yeah. It's like asking how do scientists rationalize that boats float? It's like they don't. They just explain it with physics.
Yeah.
They don't really understand a lot. Well, it depends.
No, silly scientists. They don't understand
They
metabolism.
don't understand.
Myself,
you can live off of sunlight and air.
Myself, the breatharian, I know how metabolism works. Just take a drink.
Jeez.
Alex Mark, who's been a member for 15 months, is at the ambient level, says the host is dumber on account of the lead paint chips in his formative years. Yeah, there's a distinct possibility that's it.
Quite a possibility.
Also,
I'm not saying this host is smart. I'm just saying that we should not expect him to know anything about Half-Lives, right?
Dr. Dino does say that he was taught about Half-Lives in high school. So.
Okay.
You know?
To be honest, I don't remember when I learned about Half-Lives. I mostly remember it from college geology and then Navy land stuff.
I remember a lot of stuff about that in the Navy, but I don't know if that's where I learned about it.
Yeah.
On the type of scientist, of course, but the metabolism is looked at by scientists in general as something that is individual.
I don't know what he means, but also Rosina Cold Bones Keller for $4.99 says, let them get away with ignorance, but never stupidity. You know, that's a good point. Ignorance can be excusable unless, you should know because of, like, if you graduated high school, you should be able to figure out a triangle. But, like, not knowing about, like, the half-life of carbon-14 or something, is that when that's not part of your job or anything, okay, yeah, fine, that's fair.
Yeah.
But when you start, like, saying that you're actually right and all the experts are in fact wrong, actually, that's when ignorance and stupidity kind of stop being different from each other.
Individualized. So they say, you're not really in control of your weight because it's more genetic. Your metabolism is going to be higher.
I mean, there is some sense in which people are predisposed to higher or lower metabolism genetically, but I've never heard a doctor or a scientist say that you have no control over your weight.
Right. Yeah. No, like, you obviously have some control over your weight, but, like, I'm guessing, I'm guessing that we're getting into some fat phobia here, which I certainly am against, right?
Almost certain.
My body, for example, is pretty convinced that we're just going to go into a famine any day, right? Potato famine, it's coming back any day now, right? And, like, we just got to hold on to all those nutrients,
yeah.
Right? That's how my body feels about life. My body does not understand that we're secure and we're not going to run out of food. But, like, yeah, because, I mean, I remember in high school, right, like, I played sports, right? I played basketball and I played soccer, and especially, like, on the soccer team. And I've never been, like, petite, right? I've always had a pretty, like, athletic build, right? And so I was, running the exact amount as other girls on the soccer team, and they were like much skinnier than I was and ate more. Right, like I saw there was one girl I remember who like I watched her eat a whole pizza after a soccer game, and like fair enough, she just ran like 4 miles, but like so there is quite a bit of something to like genetics, right? And different people have different builds. Like I said, I was never petite. Right, that's just not my build. But I've always been kind of like proportional to my height. I am very much like a Midwest top farmer's daughter, right? I am built to do labor. That's what my body thought we were going for, we were gonna haul hay. That's what we thought we were going for. But so in the sense of like it would be unhealthy for me to be a size 2. Like that's very true, but there are plenty of people for whom it is very healthy for them to be a size 2, right? So like as part of like that's just part of the diversity of humans. So I'm really worried Rob Matt's going into a fat phobic, right? Like if you're not super thin, you're really unhealthy, and it's only because like because you're making bad choices and are therefore a bad person, right? Like a lot of like I'm having some like evangelical like flashes here. Where, like things that are definitely not sins were definitely like, I was definitely led to believe or came to believe were sins, was like eating too much was probably a sin somehow, right? Being fat was definitely a sin.
How dare you?
And so I'm having like a really visceral reaction to this conversation. But like, so I very much lean on the side of like, yeah, listen, different people have different metabolisms, different people have different body types, and we can agree that generally speaking, unless you're allergic, like carrots are good for you and chocolate can make you happy, right? Like, and neither of those things are bad.
Hollyhock, who's been a member for 10 months, says, I did not learn about half-lives in high school. Homeschooling plus young earth creationist textbooks meant the nearest I got was how Carmen dating doesn't work. That's rough.
Yeah. Listen, what I'm learning from chat right now is that y'all went to way better high schools than me.
Well, except Hollyhock.
Except Hollyhock, yeah.
Right? They say the poor Ethiopians have a fast metabolism, and so when they don't have as much carbohydrates, they're, it's a problem. But so
I mean, I've never heard people say that Ethiopians have a fast metabolism, but I mean, I guess maybe, I don't know. What do I know about Ethiopian average metabolisms?
Right, I don't know anything about that. Right, we would, however, expect to find the greatest the people with the fastest metabolisms. We might expect to find them in a region with high genetic diversity.
True.
Right.
Ethiopia has
we
the
would
most
also
genetic diversity.
Yeah, we would also potentially expect to find a subpopulation with the lowest metabolism in that same very general region, right? Like if you want to look for extremes, the tallest people, the shortest people, right? That's where you should look.
Ethiopia who only needs to eat 1 yam every month, and he's fine.
Right. Yeah, and he's fine.
Samoans or Hawaiians have a very slow metabolism, so
I don't think that's true. In fact, I do happen to know that a lot of there was a cultural desirability for having lots of fat reserves in Polynesian cultures, specifically because Polynesians had this tendency to go on like months-long sea voyages, where not months, but like days-long sea voyages, where like you weren't guaranteed to get anything to eat, and like you need to stock up as much water as you can. Because hey, look, if you got a bit of extra fat on you, you don't need to eat for that voyage, but you're going to need to drink anyway, so you might as well put as much water as you can. And if you're going to colonize a new place, then yeah, sure, you can put some crop stuff with you. But, like, eating your seed crop, really bad idea. So, like, I mean, there's a good cultural reason why people in Polynesia would see being relatively fat as, an important thing to do if you're going to do the kind of thing Polynesians liked to do. Roasting a Cold Bones Keller for $4.99 says, chocolate-filled and chocolate-covered carrots, Maddie?
Listen, man, I'd try it.
I might try it. I don't think it would become a regular part of my, snacking rotation.
Probably not. However, what if we flipped the script and made that, mole?
Maybe.
Right?
I could also see, a chocolate cream cheese frosting on a carrot cake. That could work.
That could be really good. But yeah, I was thinking like a spicy mole with like sweeter, like roasted carrots. That would probably taste really good.
You know, the carrots we have now are way sweeter than they were 100 years ago. Yeah. Also, originally, carrot cake didn't have sugar in it. The sweetness came from the carrots.
And now we add sugar to make it even sweeter?
Exactly. Because originally it was cake that was made by people who couldn't afford to cook with sugar. So the sweetest thing they had was carrots. So they put a bunch of carrot in there, and that would sweeten it. But now everyone can afford sugar, basically. In fact, sugar is often cheaper than carrots in many cases.
Yeah.
Therefore, even though they're isolated, they can get away with eating a few amounts of calories and still thriving. And in reality, that's not really the case. Metabolism is regulated by how well your organs work, especially your thyroid gland. That's why when people's parathyroid gland doesn't work and your thyroid gland numbers start to get imbalanced, you get hyperthyroidism, right?
I mean, he's not wrong that your hormones, which are secreted by glands, will affect your metabolism, but it's not like that's the only factor. There are still genetic predispositions to higher or lower metabolisms regardless of what's going on with your thyroid. And some person with hypothyroidism could have a different metabolic rate than a different person with the same condition, simply because of differences in their sort of like baseline metabolic rate. So I don't even know if this is right or wrong, because I'm not sure what he's getting at.
Yeah. Also, I just want to do a quick break. We've got in the chat, Sir Derpy Minster. Derpy Mister is graduating high school in a few days, and I think we need look, I've got a congrats grad cup I'm drinking out of. So congrats, grad!
I also happen to know that it is Goopdo3's birthday. Goopdo3 is a frequent viewer and supporter, so happy birthday, Goopdo3.
Happy birthday, Goopdo3.
I hope that you draw a wonderful Pokemon to celebrate your birthday, because he likes to draw a lot of Pokemon.
Yeah,
Pokemon!
Yes.
Your T3 and T4 counts completely regulate how well your metabolism is going to be. That's when people, get cancer of the thyroid and they get chemotherapy done. They all of a sudden drop into what's called a hypothyroidism state, and their thyroid doesn't work, and they gain all kinds of weight because they destroyed the very gland that controls your metabolism. So they're not.
It's not the sole thing that controls your metabolism. I'm just going to take a drink. I can't stand this.
Yeah. Like if your thyroid is like way over, like if your thyroid can definitely make you like gain a ton of weight, right? Like
it's not the sole factor.
It's not the sole factor.
Looking at the body as a whole functioning system. That's the biggest problem. When it comes to medicine, you have to look at the entire body in its whole. And here's the problem again with it.
Oh, this is just that whole modern Western medicine doesn't actually treat the body as an integrated unit, which, yes, it does.
Yes, it does. And also, listen, if I cut my hand open, right, I need stitches. I don't need my thyroid checked.
No,
right?
No, you don't need a homeopathic pill for your broken hand. No, that's why there's no homeopathic drowning treatment. Right? There's no you don't go to see the homeopath when you have when you need stitches, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, you shouldn't see the homeopath for anything. But.
Right. I think it is a fair critique of Western medicine, right? Like of a place where Western medicine could improve, right? Especially for women, right? Like understanding how our periods affect our overall health and hormones and things like that, because that feels really not well understood. And it seems to cause a lot of diseases in women. I'm not saying that Western medicine is bad. I'm a big fan of it, right? But everything can be improved, right?
Yeah. And also that there are improvements to be made also doesn't negate the things that we know do work. Chemotherapy is a known treatment that works for cancer.
Absolutely.
So you're being it's not holistic enough. Doesn't matter.
Right. If you want to be hey, I'm having heart disease, maybe a thing I should do is reduce my stress, right? You should do that. You should also see a cardiologist.
Right.
Right?
Right. Yep.
And there's nothing wrong if you've got an upset tummy, have some mint tea.
Yeah, go for it.
That's nothing wrong with that. But, if you need the antibiotics, use them.
And not only is there nothing wrong with that, I mean, there are medical studies indicating that, things like ginger and mint can help with nausea. So you're not ignoring Western medicine when you do that. You're following the advice of Western medicine, which ultimately is also just medicine, by the way. Because what Western medicine is the medicine that has been shown to work, and what everything else is the stuff that has not yet been shown to work.
Yeah. So here's a great example of non-Western medicine, right? Like, if you guys don't know this, like both my parents grew up on farms in very rural areas. So my dad remembers one time as a kid, either he or his brother had like scraped up their arm real bad and it was getting like infected and gross, right? And my dad remembers his dad getting like chewing tobacco, right? And chewing it and making like a paste and putting it on the arm, right? And then later, like, taking it off, and it, like, had pulled out the infection. So some, like, things like that are, like, folk medicine practices, right? That, may have some. I don't know if any studies have been, like, controlled studies have been done on the effects of, like, tobacco for, like, bee stings and stuff like that. But those are definitely, like, folk remedies that I'm aware of. But that's, like, not the same. So, like, knowing that and knowing, like, maybe in a survivalist situation, I would try that doesn't mean I'm not going to, like, that's not as effective as cleaning the wound with some betadine.
Yeah.
Right? Or some Neosporin.
Robert Madewell, who's been a member for 36 months and is at the amniote level, says, the first time I ever heard about breatharians was when one was caught eating at a buffet. I forget who it was, Mothra and pelagic tunicate. We'll take a drink for the Mothra, but I condemn the use of the pelagic tunicate.
He's majestic. I love him.
But yeah, breatharians are routinely caught eating. It turns out, going to fast food, getting a burger, and a buffet, Always, their homes always seem curiously full of food.
Thyroid doctor, when they come along and they notice problems with the thyroid, did you know that the thyroid T3 and T4 counts are actually regulated and controlled by how well your liver's functioning? So if you fix...
I don't know that that's true, but it also wouldn't shock me that your liver has an effect on your thyroid. Roasting a cold bones killer from 199 says, tobacco and human spit to pull out infections? I mean, it's not literally going to pull out an infection. What's going to happen is that there are probably antibiotic chemicals in tobacco, which actually seems pretty likely, and that it can kill bacteria.
Tobacco is also kind of a weird plant in that, like, when it's growing, it's really harsh on the soil. It, like, sucks everything up from the soil.
That's why you gotta plant beans afterward.
Yeah, that's why you gotta plant beans out. That's also why tobacco is enriched in polonium, right? It, like, sucks it out of the soil. So I think there is, like, some kind of plant property there that's Maddie, related, but I don't know.
Homework. How many tobacco plants would you need to get enough plutonium to make a nuclear weapon?
Ooh. Yeah. Wait, no, it's polonium, not plutonium.
Oh, did I say polonium? Well, still,
you said plutonium.
Oh, yeah, I did.
But it's polonium.
I heard you say. Yeah. I'm sorry, I messed up. Can you make a nuclear weapon out of polonium?
I don't know. It's not fissionable. It just alpha decays.
Probably not then.
Your liver.
I mean, I guess if you chucked neutrons at it, you could probably get it to quicker decay, right? You could do particle capture and maybe get it down to uranium.
Your thyroid, which fixes your metabolism. So they're trying to fix your metabolism, which is at the end of the spectrum, rather than working their way to the root cause of the spectrum. That's one of the biggest problems with modern day science and a lot of people on how they view it. That's me personally.
I'm not even sure what your criticism is because I don't know where the spectrum ends are. And I don't know what quote unquote fixing of the metabolism is going on. So like, I don't even know.
That was awesome.
But at least it's on topic for the podcast, right? That was technically related to nutrition.
That's a good segue since we're talking about health. I think we're getting to the end of the questions here. This one's about eating meat, so kind of a throwback to our first conversation. Someone asked, is eating meat evolutionary or backed by scripture?
Well, first, I don't think those two things have to be mutually contradictory. But, I mean, the Bible is definitely not anti-eating meat. It's got rules about what things you should and shouldn't eat as meat. there are parts where God is like, oh, hey, now you can eat meat, or now maybe you can eat other meats, or these are the meats you should eat and you shouldn't eat. So
yeah,
like,
and these meats are for the priests.
right? Yeah, they're the only people who I guess who are technically commanded to eat meat are in fact the priests in the
Right.
in the Torah.
Because that meat's for God.
But God doesn't need
by
it,
way of
so,
the priests.
Yeah, the priest can
Yeah.
have the
Yeah.
Carrie Bronson for $5 says using polonium as a poison makes it kind of a nuclear weapon. I guess that's kind of true.
It's true. It's technically true, which is the best kind of true.
Also true, yeah. So like, yeah, it's definitely, there's nothing in the Bible that would, if taken at face value and in context, would indicate that eating meat is wrong per se. That's just not in there.
Yeah.
I don't think that it would say that it's mandatory. I don't think you could make an argument that other than those priests that you have to eat meat. I don't think I can find that anywhere in there. As far as evolution, though, I mean, humans evolved to eat meat. It's unarguable, right? We have human butchered carcasses in the fossil record from long before Homo sapiens, right? And we know that eating meat is also something that happens in outside of the hominin clade, right? Pandas also eat meat. Chimpanzees and bonobos eat meat. In fact, chimpanzees fashion spears in order to stab other primates through and kill them with a spear. You don't throw a spear. It's just a stabbing weapon. But, like, chimpanzees make spears to hunt with. That's a thing that happens. Yeah. My Unfinished Journey for $5 says, did he just say root cause of the spectrum? Does that even mean? Yeah, no one knows what that means. That's the thing with raw mat, is it's almost impossible to parse anything he says. Either cursorial angiosperms, Kuhn, for $5 says, at Maddie, I'm pretty sure the PO is polonium is the synthetic fertilizer used in tobacco. Weird. Roasting a cold bones cow for $4.99 says, doesn't the Bible have multiple spells/sorceries that involve meat, especially lamb? I mean, so there are definitely things in the Bible that would count as like various kinds of like sympathetic magic or potions or something. But my memory is that most of them involve birds. Like the cleansing from leprosy involves doves. The test for the unfaithful woman involves dove blood. I suppose you could say that like the scapegoat ritual might be seen as a sort of sympathetic magic where you're placing the sins of the community onto the goat, where you let it wander off into the wilderness, therefore taking the contamination of the wrongdoing of the community away from the city and the people. I guess you could count that, but then you're not eating the goat. So, I mean, unless you're going to count every single sacrifice as a instance of magical practice, which I don't think is fair, because most of them aren't really to affect some change, which is a big part of what's normally classified as magical practice, then I don't think it would be accurate to say that that meat, especially lamb meat, is characteristic of magical practice in the Bible. Joshua Geese for $5 says, yum, lamb polonium, a tasty dish, lol. Man, I'll tell you, for Cinco de Mayo, I had lamb tacos, and they were amazing.
Oh, that sounds so good.
Really
According to the EPA, naturally occurring radium found in the soil and from fertilizers can be taken up by the roots of the tobacco plant. Radium radioactively decays to release radon gas, which then rises from the soil around the plants. Radon later decays into the radioactive elements lead-210 and polonium-210. As the plant grows, the radon from fertilizer, along with and naturally occurring radon decay products in the surrounding soil, cling to the sticky hairs on the bottom of tobacco leaves, and rain does not wash them away.
Hey, so when you're smoking, you're just getting a bunch of alpha sources inside your body, exactly where you want them. That was sarcasm.
Yeah.
Fun.
So it's partially from the fertilizer and partially from radon. I don't think like the fertilizer is necessarily especially enriched in radon, right? It's just that is an element that just exists, in radium, but it sounds like the tobacco plant is particularly good at its sticky leaves capturing that like radon as it's coming up as a gas, right? And then it decays into, again, a solid, right? Polonium should be a solid, not a gas.
Oh, and
anyway,
as Heather Cursorial Angiosperm points out, orangutans have been seen spearfishing with their own spears that they made.
Damn.
Yeah. Turns out spears.
Yeah, we gotta leave them alone. We gotta get all the great ape, all those every primate not in a zoo. Gotta get out, leave them alone.
There are chimpanzee artifacts that are tools that have been modified by chimpanzees that are found in the chimpanzee archaeological record going back tens of thousands of years. There is a chimpanzee archaeology is a thing.
That's crazy.
And it's my understanding, like the Old Testament, were vegetarian. I think in the video that I saw of Ken Ham.
What are you talking about? There's an entire sacrificial system in which the expectation is that the priest will eat best parts of them. Well, the best parts are going to be burned to a crisp, right? Then a portion of that is going to be reserved for the priests. And then the people doing the sacrificing are supposed to take part in the feast made of the sacrificial victims' parts that aren't either getting burnt away completely or going to the priests. Like, that's a whole thing. That's how the sacrifice normally works, right?
Like, animal sacrifices are just a barbecue.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think is happening? Do you think that the whole entire bull is getting burnt to a crisp? No, people are eating it. Not all of it, but a lot of it, most of it.
Yeah. The link that blows since I keep referencing it, but I'm still kind of studying the other side. But supposedly everyone used to be vegetarian, right?
You could maybe make that argument for pre-flood, because at the end of the flood, God says something that's very easy to interpret as permission to now eat meat, which I think is probably a reasonable take on that passage. But you can't argue that that's just the Old Testament. Rosina Cold Bones Keller for $4.99 says, "I love every ape I see from chimpanzee to chimpanzee." Thank you for the Simpsons reference. I do appreciate that.
I like that. I do appreciate that only works in the American pronunciation of Z as opposed to Z.
Yes, that's true. That's
but
a Troy
I like
McClure
it.
Quote right there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Even all the animals on Earth. And then the new law, like you were referencing earlier with the New Testament, he said, Peter, rise and eat meat, right?
No. That is not the first time. Oh my goodness, I'm taking a drink. Okay, so that's a passage from Acts where Peter is like, he's like, oh, maybe I should go eat with these Gentiles, and he's like, I don't know though, because I don't normally eat with the Gentiles because they're going to serve unclean food. Maybe they're going to serve pork or something. I don't know. And then there's a vision, and there's multiple ways to interpret this vision, but no one has ever interpreted it, to my knowledge, as the first instance of eating meat. Because, hey, you know what happens in Luke? Preparation for the Passover. The Passover involves a meal of lamb.
We also specifically see them eating fish, like, a lot.
Yeah, they were fishermen. Jesus' disciples, most of them were fishermen. What do you think they were doing with the fish? They weren't putting them in aquariums.
No.
This wasn't the pet trade. Jeez. And, like, the reason that lamb is the Passover meal to this day among Jews, as well as the traditional meal among many different groups of Christians on Easter, is specifically because the Passover involved the slaughter of a lamb. In Exodus, you then use the blood of the lamb to mark your door, frame. And then what do you do with the lamb after you've done that? You eat it.
You eat it.
I'm taking a drink. I can't handle the idea that the Old Testament, people just weren't eating meat until the vision of Peter. Like, what the...
Right, why would, Jacob and his brother, right? No, it is Cain and Abel. Geez, one was a hunter and the other grew plants, right?
Yeah, one brought from the flock. Yeah. Rosina Cold Bones Keller for $1.99 says, but fish isn't meat. According to some definitions, yeah, that's true.
That's true, but he's talking about the difference between vegetarian and pescatarian, and vegetarian and not vegetarian and pescatarian, right?
Yeah, there is that, yeah. So, I'm going to hit play. We're going to have to get through this.
That kind of famous scripture verse. Do I kind of understand that right? Like, Old Testament was vegetarian before the fall, then after the fall.
Oh, okay, before the fall.
Okay, then maybe you can get away with it.
That's a pretty common theological basis, right? That the first animal killed is when God kills an animal to make clothes for Adam and Eve.
What does that have to do with the vision of Peter in Acts?
I don't know. Let's find out.
Meat eating started, and animals, carnivorous animals, started to emerge.
Yeah. Let me see. There were two questions at the beginning.
Sorry,
meat,
there were a lot of. Is eating meat evolutionary? Yeah. Did it switch from the Old Testament to the New Testament?
No.
Okay. Now I know where to go, so I don't lose my train of thought. Okay.
If he doesn't point out all the instances in which meat eating is a big part of Old Testament religious practice, I don't even know what I'm going to do. But I'm not going to be happy about it. For $2, My Unfinished Journey says, Z consistent alphabet pronunciation, A bed said. Z is actually the older pronunciation. It was actually a North American innovation to bring the word Z into alignment with words like B and C.
Hmm.
We'll go back. Is it evolutionary? Well, remember, they said that eating meat is what grew our brains into what we have today. It's
more complicated than that, but it's probably a factor. It's more that meat provided the excess calorie and protein to allow for larger brains, but the impetus to get smarter and more brainy was probably social interaction and the need to keep track of a very complicated political and social hierarchy within the local group that you were.
But we needed the excess calories, and meat pretty calorically dense,
especially if you got fat in there.
Yeah, we need the fat because our brains are fat.
the differentiating thing which made our brains grow much larger than chimpanzees who branched off and went another direction. Because as you can see, our brain cases are huge. Then you look at Neanderthals.
That's true. We'll take a drink. Human brain cases are weirdly huge.
They are weirdly huge.
Neanderthal and Denisovan, their brain cases are even larger. So we go back in time, we see.
Okay, we don't know for Denisovans because we don't have a single brain case. All we have are a few finger bones. But we do know that Neanderthals, on average, did have a larger brain case size than humans. So I'm going to take a drink for that.
Okay.
Roasting a cold bones counter for $1.99 says cooking meat gave us brain. Yeah, there is that the cooking is what actually allowed you humans to digest meat well enough. Tiri, I'm Dapper's GM. You may call me God Rana, who's been a member for 11 months, is at the Tetrapod level, says famous pre-Yiddish tofurkey industry with an AIG as a back of dicks emoji. So we'll take a drink.
Yeah. Also, I want to be clear that I personally do not hold to the idea that like the fall is a literal story and that there was no that there's this distinct point. Oh, there was no death. Right. What I'm trying to point out is that in the story of the Bible, right, in the story of Genesis, within its internal narrative, there's a specific moment when the first death of anything occurs, and it's after the fall, right? And that's part of the story.
Well, I'd argue the first recorded death. I don't think we can actually, outside of extra biblical theological commitments, actually get to that was definitely the first death that ever occurred.
Well, no, but that's I'm not saying that either, and I'm not, but there's something about the story, the narrative of just Genesis 1 is trying to tell a story about this is the moment death enters the world. No,
that would be more like Genesis 3.
Sorry, Genesis 3 or 4, yeah.
Yeah, Genesis 1 is the 6 days of creation, then the second half of the first verse of Genesis 2, and then the rest of Genesis 2 is the Adam and Eve story. And then we get to Cain and Abel. So I guess Genesis 2 is the first death recorded.
Yeah, and that's that being the first recorded death is doing a thing in the story. Right?
I tend to agree there.
That's my whole point.
Oh, here we go.
The larger brain cases. We what do we see today? Well, we know brain size is still declining.
Do we know that, Bra Matt? Because I'm going to need to see a citation on that one. Yeah, because I don't think that we know that, Bra Matt. I think that's a thing that you're claiming. Now, I have seen studies in which various measures of intelligence, which are already iffy at best, have indicated a long-term decline in some populations. But first of all, like I said, measuring intelligence is tricky as hell, and I don't really trust any of the ways that it's been measured. But second, even if there had been localized declines in intelligence, that's not the same as declining brain size, nor am I aware of anyone saying that human brain sizes are just going down.
Right. And also, like, if you were going to say that, like, okay, we've measured this one subpopulation and over time their IQ has gone down, here are the following questions I would have. One, is that a population where previously the IQ test was sort of skewed to favor them and that's become unskewed, right? That's a question. Two, is that related to somehow like education availability in that region? There's like a lot of questions I would want to ask. You know what I mean?
Plus, I mean, IQ is mostly worthless anyway.
Right, it's mostly worthless. I'm sorry, I just hit my mic. I was gesticulating wildly.
So
I will go back to playing with my raccoons.
The evidence on our side going that meat was not the driving force, because what does the brain actually require? It's a glucose driving mechanism.
I mean, the brain requires a lot of protein and a lot of fat. Like a lot. But, okay. Oh, look at those.
Yeah, my raccoons are staring at him.
So they try to now say two different reasons for the meat doing this. But let's jump back. We say that man was created in a garden and God created us to eat the fruit of the tree. Animals were created to eat plants. Evolution says that no, we became humans because we ate meat.
That's not how I would characterize it, but also animals were made to eat plants is a weird phrase. I mean,
that's a weird phrase. And also, please tell that to a lion.
Right?
Well, now this is
or
really
a whale.
Good point.
Whale's not eating algae.
No,
you know,
that's a lot of krill and whatnot. At least for big humans.
easy to falsify, right? So now let's take it. So now early man, right? We just split. We just branched off from a missing link common ancestor, and now we're walking.
With what, man? With chimpanzees? Like with banons? Okay.
Walking along, and we found like a dead carcass, or maybe we killed something somehow, and we ripped its head off, right? And we're going to eat.
Jeez, that is not how hunting normally works, but okay.
No, also, like, my guy, by that argument, all carnivores should be the smartest, right?
Which is not true.
Which is not true. So why are we smarter than lions, right? Like,
or hey, look at Tasmanian devils. Those things are super dumb. Super dumb. Carnivores.
Eat it. Now we have raw meat to eat. So now we got to be careful, because raw flesh and poultry are the high culprits of food poisoning, probably the highest, right? They have high amounts of bacteria. They have E. coli and salmonella poisoning is extremely high, which can make you very sick, and extremely high risk of parasites.
Okay, first, wild animals pretty much just always have parasites, right? You're not going to find a parasite-free wild animal. It's just not going to happen, right? So yeah, humans were dealing with parasites, like all the other animals. Well, you think that deer is riddled with tapeworms? It is. Right? Like, it's one of the reasons why when you're doing, like, wild game, you need to cook it more thoroughly, because there's a much higher chance of you getting a parasite from wild game if it's not well done.
Fun fact. Listen, again, I'm running a TTRPG soon where all the players are raccoons, so I've got a lot of raccoon facts in my brain, and that's why I have little toys to play with. A raccoon in the wild will only live about 3 years. In captivity, it can live up to 20. Because when you have access to, say, deworming treatment,
medicine,
reliable
food.
Yeah, it turns out you'll live longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cross-platform Adventures, who's been a member for 14 months, says, over the last 3,000 years, average human skull size has decreased, but that is not intelligence. Interesting.
That's super cool.
I would like you to send me something on that, because I was unaware of any research on that. Roasting Cold Bones Keller for $1.99 says, look at corvids, super smarts. Also true, yeah. Also, fairly small brains for being so smart.
Yeah.
Carrie Bronson for $2 says, orange cats exist, therefore evolution is a lie. They are the dumbest orange cats.
Yeah.
So now you're taking in a food group that's highly risky, which primates today still eat, by the way. They eat meat. They eat each other.
Hey, you know what? Good point. Raw Matt is right about that. Good job, Raw Matt.
True.
Chimpanzees are infamous for eating other primates. As well as, I mean, humans eat other primates too, right? Like, you know the poison dart blowguns that are often used in the Amazon? That's where they have the poison dart frogs, so obviously that's where you're going to use the poisoned dart blowgun thing. One of the most typical prey items taken by hunters using that weapon is, in fact, monkeys. Yep. They shoot the dart into the monkey, then wait for it to fall out of the tree. Because it's gonna be dead soon.
They're still carnivores, so why they're not growing a bigger grain is still beyond me.
Because, Matt, it's not just that there's a one-to-one eat meat, get big brain. First of all, meat is a much smaller proportion of the diet of a chimpanzee than it would be of, say, a Homo erectus, right? Or a Homo habilis. Much smaller proportion. Yeah. We can know because we can see how many kill sites there were. We can look at tooth wear on different animals, including chimpanzees and like Homo habilis and whatnot. So it's a much smaller part of the diet. But also, the meat eating isn't the direct cause of the big brain, because then otherwise all carnivores would be big-brained. The key factor...
Excess calories.
The excess calories is what allowed humans to respond positively to the other separate pressure to get big brains, which was an internal pressure. It was the need to be able to interact in a highly complex social environment involving large numbers of people. Right, like the average chimpanzee troop has trouble when it gets past like a score individuals, right? Like it's hard to keep track for a chimpanzee of 40 other chimpanzees. That's a big thing. Human groups, even modern hunter-gatherer groups, as well as what we have evidence for in both archaeology for like the Stone Age and in paleontology, like paleoanthropology, can get well over 100 before it becomes impossible for the humans to manage. You yourself can manage around 100 or so personal connections with friends and family. That's more than a chimpanzee can do. Why can you do that? Well, it's because of your big-brainedness. And these large groups are advantageous for humans because they allow for a great degree of both division of labor as well as care for injured or sick members of the group, which allows those people to recover so that they can then continue on to either reproduce or, at the very least, benefit the rest of the group's reproduction, which then has a carry-on effect if they have relatives in that group. Yeah. The impetus for the big brain is probably social. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the impetus for the big brain is probably social. And if you're like, but are you sure humans have big brain, though? Right? Like, I feel like this is super related to human nerds' ability to remember every detail of the world building of Middle Earth. Right? Like, look what you can do and other animals can't.
I can tell you who Feanor was.
Yeah!
Take that.
Take that.
Sorgal Angiosperms Coon for $2 says, has Matt heard of the Flynn effect?
Creation Myth has an answer for us. Dr. Dan says no.
I don't think I've heard of the Flynn effect, so I doubt he has.
I don't know what it is, but I'm not a biologist.
Therefore, they invoke, no, we cooked it. Therefore...
I mean, look, it's not just that, like, cooked meat is safer, therefore ancient humans must have cooked. We've found their fire pits. We've found bones with fire damage that have been butchered by humans. We know on the basis of physical, actual fire pits that they were with bones in them that were butchered with butcher marks on them, that these early humans and human relatives were cooking their meat. This isn't a guess, right? It's like you walk into an abandoned house and there's a fire pit with some charcoal at the bottom of it. It's like, well, I don't know. I mean, maybe they lit a fire. Who's to say? Like, I don't know, man. There's an actual fireplace with actual firewood in it. Seems like they lit a fire. Jeez.
Yeah.
What happened one day is man was probably walking along and there was a bushfire and they smelled meat and they probably walked over and they found a gazelle or something and they started eating the meat that was cooked and that meat was safer and that's what probably grew our brain. Well, now,
I mean, I'm not going to disagree that the first instance of humans noticing that fire is a useful thing for food preparation may have been a wildfire cooking meat without any human interaction. Like, that might have been the kind of thing that sparked it, because it had to start somewhere, right? You don't just immediately know that fire is good for meat.
But I also have to say that, like, the human's ability to be like, what if I did this? I'm gonna eat that. Right? Like,
True.
Someone Leroy Jenkins that, right? We don't need to explain how humans figured that out. We're dumb and curious.
There are people right now eating packaging peanuts on TikTok. That's just a thing.
We're dumb, right?
Also, there was a recent social media trend in East Asia And I think, I don't remember in which country it was, but there was a place that they were selling biodegradable toothpicks that were made out of like starch. And people noticed that
Are you just eating them?
if you put them in like hot oil, they puff up, like, you know, Cheetos or something. So yeah, they were just dropping them in hot oil and fishing them out with chopsticks and eating them. But then the government was like, please don't. These are not food grade. They are not tested to be safe for consumption. Yes, they're made out of stuff that people eat, but like, this is not food grade material. We are not regulating these for human consumption. Please stop. If you really want to eat puffed up starch, get rice noodles and put those in the hot oil. They will also puff up, and they're regulated as food.
Yeah. We will eat anything.
Oh, by the way, let's see. Creation Myth has pointed out that the Flynn effect is a consistent rise in IQs through the 20th and into the 21st century, and Joshua Geese for $5 says, clearly the Flynn effect has something to do with attempting to gain access back to the deleted files and becoming digitized. Good Tron reference. Oh, it was South Korea, Alexander Dankert points out. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah. And just like, please don't eat toothpicks. Just get some rice noodles.
Don't.
Yeah.
How you
Also, packaging peanuts are also puffed starch. But again, they're not controlled as food. There's no guarantee that they're not just covered in all sorts of stuff you don't want to eat. In fact, they probably are.
It's covered in rat piss, you guys.
Right? Like, don't eat those.
That's what it's covered in.
The point of making them out of puffed starch is so that they rot easily when they're thrown out, rather than sticking around in a landfill for the next 2 million years.
have an even bigger problem because guess what? Cooked meat by fire is a class 1 carcinogen.
Hey,
Oh
Ron,
my god. Can I drink
yeah,
for that
sure,
one?
we'll drink. First of all, there was a slight carcinogenic effect known with like barbecued and smoked meat, so I'll give you that, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are slight increases in your cancer risk if you eat those things. However, it's fairly small, right? Like, it's very, very small. Look further. These are people who were in a situation where, like, the difference between them starving or dying of dysentery versus making it the next year or so might just be that cooked meat. If you tell me, like, oh, hey, you can do this thing and die of cancer in 30 years, or you can not do that thing and die another horrible death in 3 days, I'm going to take the cancer in a few decades.
Also, like, a way bigger carcinogen would be breathing in the smoke from that fire, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't have a fire if it's cold or keeps the wild animals away.
Right?
Right?
Like, everything is a risk management kind of thing in life, right?
Yeah.
You have to think, okay, what's the benefit? What's the cost? And look, sometimes slightly increased cancer risk is worth the cost.
Yeah.
Every time you've ever taken a plane ride, you slightly increased your cancer risk.
Yeah. Okay, it is true that in modern times, cancer is happening more often. However, it's because it's directly, like, correlated with us living longer, right? So, like, if you take I'm, like, quoting my biology professor from undergrad. If you take the age-adjusted statistics, cancer is not more common than it was 300 years ago, right? But we live longer, and you're more likely to get cancer the older you live, because in general, it requires several genetic mutations kind of in a row.
Basically, nothing else
and it takes a while to accumulate those.
Essentially, if nothing else kills you, eventually you will get cancer.
Actually can't. Yeah.
Right? It's just sort of the, like, otherwise default, right? Oh, you didn't get eaten by a bear or a tiger or trampled by an elephant or gored by a boar or murdered in a turf warfare situation out in the savannah. You managed to avoid heart disease thus far. You managed not to drown. Like, okay, great. Well, eventually it's going to be cancer. Which, it sucks. Okay.
Right, it sucks, but you're gonna die of something eventually, right? And but there's a reason that we're able to focus on trying to cure cancer now, right? Because it's a problem now, and we've addressed a lot of other problems, right?
Rosina, Cold Bones Keller for $4.99 says, but newer packaging peanuts smell of delicious corn treats. They clearly belong in the mouthful. So first of all, they're completely unflavored. Like, it's just the raw, well, not raw, but it's just the starch. If all you want is like slightly crunchy starch, just toast some white bread. Right?
Yeah,
man. Just toast white bread. Don't put any butter or anything on it.
Make yourself some popcorn. It's easy. It takes 5 minutes.
Yep. All right, but we are about to wrap up here. So, Dutch Tunicate official, who's been a member for 1 month and is at the technical level, says, "Why are humans both smart and not?" That's actually an interesting question, right? And it is funny, but it's also an interesting question because humans can do all sorts of amazing stuff with their brains. But then also you get people who take seriously the idea that like maybe eating is optional. And I think
also you and I, Dapper, have spent a lot of time around Navy nukes, and which are arguably like some of the smartest dumb people I know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And here's my philosophy. Because I was for 4 years I was in charge of, or at a command in charge of, all the little nucleates right out of basic, right? Mostly 18, 19 years old. And what they did was real dumb stuff.
All the time.
In real clever ways, right? Like that's...
So I think part of it is that the human brain is good enough to get people to survive most of the time to the point where they can have some babies. And that involves navigating a very complex world, which otherwise humans are physically ill-equipped to deal with, right? Like in most places in the world where humans live, if you only had like the cognitive ability of, say, like a wolf or something, you would die very soon. You wouldn't have shelter. You wouldn't be able to get enough food. You would die of exposure on probably the first week or so if you were just dumped into like, I don't know, like Alaska or like around here in Tucson without any ability to modify the environment around you to make tools and stuff like that. But on the other hand, that doesn't say anything about your ability to think critically and logically in complex ways and about, difficult to understand topics and abstract topics and things like that, right? Humans are really good at certain things. Really good at pattern recognition. They're really good at social interaction with other humans for the most part. They're really good at determining heuristics, which are safe, but not necessarily very accurate. A great example is like when humans assign agency to things more likely than not, right? So like, oh, rustle in the bush? Sure, it could be the wind, but it could also be a tiger. And if I'm wrong that it's the wind, then no big deal. But if I'm wrong that it's not a tiger, well, that could really be bad. So humans are more likely to assign agency to things, even though those things tend not to have agency. They're also more likely to accept the statements of other people who are shown to believe those statements on the basis of costly behavior, because otherwise, why would they be doing the behavior that's so costly if they didn't actually believe it? And people, more often than not, tend to trust each other to believe things that are true. So you get a whole lot of these heuristics, which don't always work, but can be adaptive in many situations, because the alternative, or the opposite bias, would be obviously less advantageous. So humans are like, there's this argument that you get a lot of presuppers with, which is like, how do you know you can trust your brain? It could be doing all sorts of stupid stuff. It's like, no, I know it's doing all sorts of stupid. I have to constantly struggle to make it not do all the stupid stuff. Because thinking critically and thinking things through logically and having good, clear reasons, that's hard. That takes time and effort to do and training. You're not born with a critical thinking installed in your brain, right? That's something you have to learn how to do. So yeah, that's my answer to that mostly joke question from Dutch Tunicate Official. And then Mark Rose for 199, I can talk, says, is there even such a thing as a Class 1 C-Gen? I don't actually know the question. It's carcinogen. I actually don't know the answer to that question because I don't know enough about carcinogen classification and whatnot. I know that potential carcinogen is the class that everything gets that isn't a known carcinogen, because literally anything is a potential carcinogen. Right? Because anything could be a carcinogen, and how would you prove it's not? I don't know how you would prove it's not. It seems impossible. But anyway, we're starting to go over a little bit. Maddie, what do you have coming up for us?
I'm figuring out channel programming. I'm kind of getting into, so I'm done with the dissertation. I have napped a lot. I've officially graduated. There are no longer people staying at my house in town for graduation. And so, yeah, so going to be looking on channel programming, but I've got to see what that's going to be. Yeah, so I think my next thing will be our next Power Rangers stream.
Which is hopefully this week.
Hopefully, okay, so that's hopefully tomorrow night?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which
I
is something I
wasn't
say
sure,
a lot
so I
on
haven't.
Wednesdays, even though it doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, in an effort to make sure that we can actually get through the next, 9 episodes, which is all we have left, before, you know, the heat death of the universe. When we have to cancel, I'm just rescheduling for the next week.
The next week. Okay, got it. So yeah, I'm good for tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, top hats off. Come see me be Claire Masters, your ever helpful Blue Ranger.
Yeah, in the battle for Coral Harbor.
Yeah.
What's coming up on this channel? So on Thursday, I am premiering a mirror of my chat with Dr. Kip Davis about Jesus of Nazareth and whether or not he was a mythical or historical character.
The one that made GE so mad.
Yeah, Godless Engineer and his buddy Richard Kerr. They got pretty angry about that, and then oddly enough, strawmanned me in a thumbnail and video title, which was weird, but whatever.
That's weird.
To be fair, we did dunk on Richard Kerr a fair bit, although I don't think we mentioned GE at any point. But maybe I'm wrong about that. It's been a while. That should be coming out at noon. Sorry, on Thursday. That's noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. That was actually a stream that we did during that time that my channel was taken down for a fake copyright, or not copyright, community guidelines strike. One that only went away because people started harassing YouTube on Twitter. So thank you, I appreciate it, because that is literally the only way anyone ever gets anything done with YouTube. Is you have to make it public, and you have to make it very public. Then on Saturday, the plan is to hopefully finish off the Thomas Kindell talk. That is the guy his voice sounds like the voice of God from the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston. Very impressive voice, very dumb things that it's saying. Let's see. Then on the next Tuesday, Jackson with Jackson should be on. But also, speaking of Jackson Wheat, hopefully on Thursday, I will be on his channel to discuss the flood and biological complexity with a young Earth creationist who Jackson has encountered on Twitter, who was sharing Harun Yahya Where's the Evolution style memes. One of which apparently was a modern eel and Picaya saying, "Where's the evolution?" And it's like, oh boy, all over the place. Because, a modern Actinopterygian fish that is an eel is, in fact, almost nothing like Picaya from the Cambrian. That's what's on this. If you are interested, over on the Discord, we will be doing some Power Rangers SPD. Feel free to hop over there if you want. We usually watch 4 episodes. That being said, though, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for sticking around. I hope to see all of you at the very least on Thursday. And I will talk to all of you later. Bye.
Bye, team.
Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Benthoven, Thoravara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Eleron Teller, Horseflesh, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostek Van Manen, Landon Knoll, Maddie Babbity, Sphincter of Doom, Wallace, John Ackerman, Eta V, and Strawberry Vein. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.